Hello everybody and welcome back to the Overlap Breakdown channel, and I'm here today to discuss why Arsenal, in my opinion, can actually beat Paris Saint-Germain in the Champions League final. And before we get into this, I just want to say thank you very much for 50,000 on the channel. We've had a massive month in May, and we're here to top it off with Arsenal against PSG tactical preview. And then on top of that, we are going to cover Ederson to Manchester United later on in the week, who looks like he's going to become Manchester United's new midfielder. But yeah, I spent quite a few days doing this, quite a few days researching how Arsenal can go about beating PSG, and I actually think I've found quite a lot of things that Arsenal could be looking to exploit, and I think it's really crucial that we talk about. They've already played 3 games against each other in terms of Enrique's PSG, Arteta's Arsenal, and we can make a lot of conclusions and draw a lot of conclusions from them games, from the patterns that happened in them games, the bits of, on the pitch, what went wrong for each team last time, and see if we can emphasise them. So we are going to focus primarily on Arsenal and what they can do. So obviously, the first game they actually played against each other was the game at the Emirates, which Arsenal won 2-0 with a Saka free kick and Kai Havertz header. Now, in that game, they played extremely different to probably what people would familiarise themselves with Arsenal against PSG, what they were doing. They actually had 35% of the ball in that game, but I want to explain to you what they did in that game and then going into that, what they did in the knockouts, which is very different. So before we do that, we're going to talk about everything to do with PSG and what they do. So PSG have become one of the best teams, if not the best team in Europe, quite simply because of how good they are at attacking depth, which we'll talk about in detail, how good they are at rotating in the centre with that 3 in there, and just basically how flexible they are across the pitch. So oftentimes, obviously, build in this 4-3-3, which is how you see it on paper when it comes out. But then they do a lot of different, manoeuvres in rotation and everything. So oftentimes they're using Hakimi, who's actually a potential doubt for this game, on the right-hand side. And he looks to either go narrow inside this half space or exchange with the right winger and stay on the right-hand side. Nuno Mendes has a very different role. So as the centre-backs shuffle like this, we end up with Pacho in the middle. Nuno Mendes sometimes sits as that third centre-half at the left side of the 3. Then we've got 3 bodies that are interchangeable in here, which is Fabian Ruiz, João Neves, Vitinha. Very, very fluid midfielders. Love to rotate. We're going to go on into a lot about their movements and how they manipulate oppositions later in the video. And then from this position, often the midfielders can actually come and stand in Nuno Mendes' position, which is obviously why they are able to get their fullbacks so high and advanced. So sometimes Vitinha will push down here, and that'll give Nuno Mendes the license to run in there. And because of the squad that PSG have built under Luis Enrique, they pretty much attack in every way possible. They have got pace, and despite how, on the eye small that team is, they've got power and they've got flexibility. And flexibility means unpredictability. So they've got solutions to everything. Now, I've gone back and I've watched the games that PSG have played against Arsenal, and I want to explain to you what Arsenal tried to do, especially in the home game in the group stage, where Arsenal actually managed to keep PSG completely boxed in their own half. So what Arsenal were actually doing was they were pressing in a 4-4-2. So I'll push everyone up to show you how it looks on the board. And then what oftentimes happens in PSG's build-up, so in this case, it was actually Donnarumma. They're splitting the centre halves. They're attracting 1, if not 2 in front like this. And they're using Dembele to completely drop off that centre line and just go looking for the ball. Just vacate the centre. Give the centre-backs really no focal point to jump out on. So oftentimes you will see a player move like that. Now, for Arsenal, they use what we like to call a hybrid press. So they start in a pretty deep position like this, and then when the ball is forced, either from a curved run through Kai Havertz, who in this game actually played just behind Trossard as a 10, when he curves his run, so imagine if we're trying to play that ball in there, if Havertz curves outside, then they force the ball down this side. And once the pitch gets smaller, like this, and you've got less of angles to work with on the side of the pitch, then Arsenal look to go and jump like this, all man-to-man. But oftentimes for Arsenal, they did look to push on Gabriel and Saliba all the way through. Even if Dembele was coming into these areas here, they would be followed through. But because they managed to stay a little bit in between, sometimes going man-man, sometimes going zonal, you actually see a very, very brilliant Arsenal press. And because PSG are very, very good at manipulating space in there with midfielders, it didn't all the time work for Arsenal across the 3 games they played. But I want to explain to you, obviously, what they need to look out for Arsenal in open play. So here in the game, we've got 1-0 PSG. This is actually the game that PSG won in the knockout stage at the Emirates. I want to talk to you about the false 9 deep runs and the deeper starting position of Ousmane Dembele and why him coming in here causes real problems for opposition. So In the first screenshot, we can see that PSG have actually won the second ball. Now, if you look at PSG's front three, none of them are attached onto the back line of Arsenal. They're all pretty sort of reserved positions like this, giving Arsenal no real, option to go like that, to go touch tight, because there's that much of a gap there leaving between them and the defenders. Now, what you can see on this second to last picture here is Ousmane Dembele actually runs off the shoulder of Declan Rice. And with Declan Rice not obviously alert to covering Dembele, he's more focused on his man in midfield ahead of him. Dembele can run off the shoulder like this, and because the centre-halves are too far away from Dembele, he often ghosts into the final third and makes runs that wouldn't ordinarily be picked up. And then the PSG can smash it through the lines. Probably should have been a goal for PSG in this instance. Now, this isn't the only time this has happened against Arsenal. I want to show you again, the 1-0 that PSG actually took against them when they beat them that night was also from something very, very similar. So we're talking about deep runs in behind from the wingers. So in this picture right here, we can see how PSG have pretty much latched onto one side of the pitch. I can move it on the board to show you even better. This is how oftentimes PSG look to build up. They are completely, shut off on one side like this. Loads of bodies in this area. Now, PSG actually look to recycle this, and we can see what I was mentioning before, when the ball goes out to the wide centre-half, Arsenal love to jump. Now, in this picture at 3 minutes 01, look at the Vitinha, Fabian Ruiz, look at where their eyes are looking. They are looking over their shoulders for Dembele in here. Dembele makes a run here. Vitinha, Fabian Ruiz are looking to drag the markers out the way. So if you can imagine that William Pacho is on the ball like this, Vitinha is looking to drag his marker out the way, Fabian Ruiz is looking to do the same, and that opens up this sweeping ball for Pacho to play through on his left foot, which releases Dembele, and we can see that in the pictures right here. I mean, look, just before the ball's actually released, the amount of different runs that are being made by Kvara, Fabian, Vitinha there. There's a lot of deep runs. Dembele picks it up on the halfway line. They carry it through towards Arsenal's penalty area. It's given to Kvara, squared back for Dembele. It's 1-0, and PSG take 1-0 home that night. So we know how good PSG are. Everyone's been talking about how ferocious they are, how attacking they are, how brilliant they are to watch. I mean, when I was watching them, it took me a good few games to actually realise that there is a weakness in this team and there is things that you can do. Now, for me, one of them is how Arsenal were pressing in that first game they played against each other in the group stage. Now, a lot of people like to talk about Arsenal, and especially in European finals, they love to talk about sitting deep and making it tough for your opposition. In the games at the Emirates, and even the away game they actually played, Arsenal played better when they're on the front foot. And I think you have to defend by attacking, and I think pressing is the way to go about it in this game. Having that more reserved approach and then jumping onto PSG's back line. So, yeah, I think there are a number of things I want to talk about here in terms of what Arsenal can do. So, I'm going to talk to you about exploiting the space behind PSG's fullbacks. Now, this is something that is huge for me and something that we've seen Arsenal do themselves. So if we take it back to the start, and we can imagine if we just reset Arsenal back into this 4-4-2, as we were mentioning before, and we put PSG back into what they were doing like this. So we've got the 4-3-3. Now, oftentimes, as we mentioned in the start of the video, Hakimi, Nuno Mendes, they like to make really, really aggressive runs late to add that layer of depth to PSG. So if we've obviously got deep runs like this, Hakimi, Nuno Mendes are looking to push all the time in behind. Now, on top of that, PSG go man-to-man in every phase of the game, which means, obviously, if you can imagine a left winger's on the ball like this and he's coming inside with the ball, they are looking to stay man-to-man. If you compare that to Arsenal, who can go more zonal at times, that doesn't allow their right back just to run across the pitch like this. They don't allow that because it leaves gaping holes. Now, for PSG, this is something that I've, found out in a lot of their goals that they've conceded this year is a massive problem. So we've got this game against Metz, and I'm going to run through so many examples so quickly because there's that many. So we've got this example against Metz. You can see it's 3-1. You can see the ordinary shape of PSG's back four like this. He waltzes off the shoulder of the right winger, and then because of that man-to-man situation they've got, look at the distance between PSG's right back to their first central midfielder. He runs through that half space, cuts it back to the Metz winger, who makes it 3-2. Obviously a consolation goal. Take it on into the next game, Olympique Lyon, 1-0 down, 29 minutes in. We can see that PSG are looking to jump out of this shape. So Lyon are building up right here. We can see Zabarnyi steps out from that back four, so he doesn't maintain position. His man has stepped into midfield. So because of that man-to-man orientation of their defence, He's going to make that run no matter what. Pacho does this a lot, and he's one of the best centre-halves in the world, but he's very aggressive. So because of this, Leon managed to take advantage of that curved inside run from the winger. I'll play the screenshots on now. They cut inside, he runs in behind the fullback and makes it 1-1. And last but not least, we probably got the worst example of them all, and we're talking now about how we can manipulate it with deep runs from wingers. This is against Saint Etienne, 9 minutes in away from home. PSG are obviously playing in the pink kit. We can see that man-to-man already. When the ball goes out to the winger, look at how attracted they are to the man. That leaves this massive gaping hole between fullback and centre-half. I mean, look at the two Saint Etienne players on the last line here, how much space they have in behind. They make that run down the half space, they cut it back, and again, it's 1-0 against PSG. So, this is a very viable strategy. We're talking about when PSG like to go fast and deep with their fullbacks. We're looking about getting in behind of their fullbacks with these sorts of runs. We're looking at combining down the outside. If they go man-to-man, can we drag them out with positions? So I actually went through and I had a look at all of Arsenal's, chances they actually, squandered against PSG in some of the games. I've seen pretty much the exact same thing. And they probably should have scored 2, if not 3 goals from this exact plan. So I want you to keep your eye on this. So this is at 1-0 down, the away leg. So they're at 2-0 down on aggregate. You can see that they're running down the line. And look at Declan Rice's position as he lays the ball off to Leandro Trossard. He's looking to ghost between that space between the fullback and the centre-half. That midfield, for all the praise it's got and for all the people saying that, yes, it's technical over physical, stuff like that, they're not great with deep runs. Every attacking team that lacks a little bit more running power in the midfield, and it's nothing against their midfield players. They're brilliant. They're just not standout attributes. The standout attributes are not running. It's not legs. It's not depth in terms of legs. So oftentimes, this space, when dragged out, can be got at massively by your left-hand-sided players. As we can see here, Rice gets it, cuts it back, and it just goes over Saka's head. He misses the chance. It's not the only time it happened. This is now at 3-1 in the leg. We all remember that chance that Saka squandered in France when they were 3-1 down. It could have got Arsenal into the game with 15 minutes to go. Look at this. They get down the left-hand side, and we can see that it's now Calafiore. And look at, again, that space. As they stepped out onto the left winger, they've stepped out onto the pocket player. They're played in behind to Calafiore. He smashes it across the box. They've took advantage again of that space in behind the fullback. And boom, Saka misses this chance with this screenshot here. So I think it's really key to explore this idea with Calafiore, with Trossard, with Havertz, with Gyökeres. There's a lot going for Arsenal on that left-hand side, and I want to explain to you why. PSG's right wingers are counter-attacking players. Their forwards are counter-attacking players. They do press very high, but they don't really run back in terms of, they don't follow their man all the way here. And they do press very high. They are hard-working wingers. But oftentimes, Calafiore for Arsenal goes on wonders, goes on adventures. And he often ends up inside these sorts of pockets of space here. Now, if you double up on the outside and you manage to catch out a winger who's not tracked Calafiore in, if you can imagine that this is Trossard, who likes to oftentimes bring the ball inside, he can often drag Hakimi like that. And that leaves that space that we've just shown on the examples there. And let's say it's a player like Martinelli. He can leave on the byline 1v1. He might not win that 1v1, whether or not it's against Zaire Emery or Hakimi, but he will generate that space from being there. And then I also think when they do actually push in behind, they do get into these channels for the cutbacks on the examples we've just shown you, Arsenal need quality inside the box, because when the ball sinks deeper, you need players on the edge of the box here and in the box here. And if I can show you more examples, Enzo Fernandez scored one against PSG in the Champions League. And to be fair, I've took a lot from that first half against PSG. I've took a lot from it with Chelsea, because even though they actually got battered across the two legs, they played very well and they managed to exploit this weakness number of times. I'll throw the screenshots up on your screen now. They scored 2 goals in that game through this exact pattern of manipulating the man-to-man, working them wide situations where you can rotate, manipulate man-to-man, getting behind the fullbacks when they press high. And for me, I just think this is a real good opportunity for Arsenal. I really do. And I think they could do something quite special on Saturday. And I think this is a really key area to talk about. And I think it's really important that Arsenal actually go there and be brave and, don't be inferior to this PSG team. I think it's quite funny because of how well they've celebrated the Premier League. It almost feels like the Champions League's not there. But this could be a chance to do a double. I mean, that's unprecedented for Arsenal. So I think we do need to have a look at, the mental side of this, the physical side of this, but I think Arsenal need to go there, stick the chest out and go after them and get something. And I think they do that by showing what they did in the first game against Luis Enrique's PSG, where they pressed them off the park, they pretty much kept them in their own half, restricted them to nothing, keep the ball in their third. It's a mental battle to deal with them rotations, but if you don't go man-to-man, if you play, as we've just mentioned there, if you play zonal like this, they can rotate all they want in here. But as long as we're not jumping out man-to-man and leaving them gaps, Arsenal, most of the time, that's where they play the best football. That's when they become one of the best teams in the world, when they are pressing teams off the park like that. And I think they've just got depth with runners in the squad. And I think across the games where they played against PSG, oftentimes Arsenal have always gone, this player's injured, this player's injured. I know Jakub Kiwior played one game. I remember Calafiori playing right back in one of the games. And yeah, I think now Arsenal are in such a great position. The only concern I would have is the right back. I think there's a lot of things to be said there, especially with Kvaratskhelia playing. Could they get Lewis Skelly and Declan Rice in the centre with Eze, which I think is when Arsenal have looked the best this season, when they are bouncing people off, they're making deep runs, they've got power in the centre. I think that, for me, would work brilliantly. So, yeah, and I just want to throw one last bit up on your screen right now, because after all this we've mentioned about Arsenal manipulating PSG, they have done it in a lot of their games and just fallen short. Even if it's not registered in a touch in the box, a shot on target, anything, they have still shown signs of that. And this is a really good example here. We can see it 2 minutes in, so we're already looking for examples and ways to take advantage of their man-to-man marking. This picture right here, look at where Calafiori stood. He's right the way in midfield, and that's attracting that pressure from Zaire Emery. So he's dropped into midfield, and we can see on the next picture where David Raya looks to smash it in behind, he's still got that midfielder of PSG on him in midfield. He's enticed that pressure. When David Raya looks to smash the ball in behind, it's actually Martinelli who makes the run between the fullback and the centre-back in that same position there. He's looking to make this run into here. The ball lands here in the box. It doesn't register in a shot, an expected goal, a touch in the opposition's box. But this is a very, very big chance at 2 minutes in, which could have completely changed the way that Arsenal go about these games. And I think it's a chance for Arsenal to do something really special. And I think the key will be on that left-hand side. I think there's a lot to be expected of that left-hand side, and I think it's time they go there, stick the chest out, and prove that they're champions of the biggest league and the best league in the world. So I'm really torn who I actually want to start up front for Arsenal in this game, because as we've mentioned, well, we've not even mentioned it, Arsenal have gone long from a lot of goalkeeper kicks. PSG do go long from pretty much every goalkeeper kick when it's dead. And I think Havertz offers you a little bit more of that aerial presence to knock the ball down from these situations in comparison to Gyökeres. But if we're talking about exploiting this issue that we're currently debating on this right-hand side of PSG's defence, Gyökeres' best attribute in Arsenal at Sporting is these spins into the channel, is that ability to, usually when PSG are pressing high, to offer an outlet in behind to curve his run in there. And I'm just thinking, if we're talking about all these man-to-man attributes, could he be actually someone that could favour this game in terms of dragging PSG's defence into deep waters? And I'm not just talking about him playing well within himself, within his individual performance, but I'm talking if he can come over here and drag a centre-half, can he open up the spaces for other people to arrive into? Because, sometimes it's not always the person making the spin into the channel, as we've just shown, who actually ends up scoring or even assisting the goal. It's just the person who makes the space. And I know it's an outlandish thing to say. I know it's an outlandish thing to say about Arsenal and PSG. PSG, won the treble last year. How can I sit here and say that Arsenal could potentially win this game? But I think this idea that we're talking about is something that they could do. And I watched all the other phases of the games and the 3 legs they played against them. I do think PSG have incredible, transitional quality. Doué, Barcola, Kvara, Dembele, running in behind. And I think they are pretty much unstoppable. But if I think of one team, who is the one team in Europe who could contain them 1v1? The closest you're going to get to it is Arsenal. They're better than Bayern Munich 1v1. They're better than Man City 1v1, Madrid 1v1. They are. They've got the best defenders in the world. They've got the best holding midfielder in the world. So for me, this is just something that I look at and I think Arsenal could really do something good here. I really do think if they go about it well. I've seen enough in the games they've played against them, even though they've only won one, to actually think they could go here and do this. But PSG are a marvellous team, a team that has been given marvellous amounts of credit. And they go into this game as favourites, rightly so. But I think there are things Arsenal could look to do. I think there are. Just to go through the starting 11, I think David Raya in net. I don't know whether or not Jurriën Timber's fit, but if he is fit, I'd go straight for him. I'd go Gabriel Saliba. I'd go Calafiori for them roams into the final third. I would bolster out the midfield with Rice, Luis Skelly and Eze. The only other thing I would think about playing Martins Zubimendi in midfield is simply just to kill the game and kill the tempo and push Rice up into these spaces here. I wouldn't mind that. I think Luis Skelly gives you a bit more physical assurance in there, though. Whereas I think they could actually press Zubimendi a little bit, easier than Luis Skelly, because Luis Skelly can bounce off pressure. And then across the front, I'm really torn on the centre forward. I'm really torn. I'm going to say Gyökeres, simply because of them spins into the channel. But he can do that if Arsenal want to rip it up and go again after the first 45. I'd go Trossard at left wing just simply because of how good he is at, attracting space, attracting pressure and arriving into these areas where he's always been his hot zone. I'd go Eze behind the 9 and I'd go Saka on the right. And I just think this could be a team that could do it. Yeah, I don't know, man. I spent a good few days thinking about this, and when I was watching it, I was just thinking, is it really time for me to tell you how good PSG are, or is it time for me to actually look at something where Arsenal could genuinely take the sword to them with the confidence they've got off the title, with the physical, potentially, one-up they've got on PSG. I do think this could be a really interesting game. I do think PSG are one of the best teams in the world, and believe me, it was hard to find a weakness in this team, but I think I've got one. And just looking at what PSG's weaknesses are, I think Arsenal could really do something special on Saturday. So, yeah. Thank you very, very much for watching this episode of the Overlap Breakdown. If you did enjoy, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to the channel, and we'll be back next week for some more analysis. Thank you.